Hello. My girlfriend told me, I can't bring you to Christmas. My ex will be there and it'll be awkward. After I'd already bought thoughtful gifts for her parents and planned to propose. So I walked away. Months later, she's losing it because I'm with someone better. My name is Johnny. I am 31 and I work as a data analyst in Austin. My schedule is pretty predictable, mostly remote with occasional office days, which means my life runs on routines, planning, and spreadsheets more than anything dramatic. My girlfriend was Marissa, 29. We had been together a little over 2 years, and while we did not officially live together, I was at her apartment most weeks, and we had already started talking seriously about getting engaged sometime the following year. I am posting because I still do not know if I missed something obvious or if I just ignored a pile of warning signs because I had already invested too much time into the relationship. Marissa presented extremely well to other people. She had that sharp social style where she could say something rude with a smile and make the other person look dramatic for reacting. Early on, I wrote it off as stress, then sarcasm, then her just being direct. Looking back, the directness only ever went one direction. Waiters, customer service people, her younger cousin, my brother, basically anyone she thought had less social leverage than her got the edge of her personality. With me, it showed up in a slightly different way. She liked keeping me a little off balance. If I made plans too confidently, she would say I was being controlling. If I asked for her input, she would say I had no initiative. If I got her something thoughtful, she would ask why I was trying so hard. If I kept things simple, she would say I was emotionally lazy. Somehow, every disagreement ended with me defending motives I never actually had. Despite that, I stayed. On paper, the relationship made sense. We were the same age range, wanted a similar future, had overlapping friend groups, and there were no obvious lifestyle clashes. I make a stable income, live pretty calmly, and avoid unnecessary chaos. She always said that was exactly the kind of life she wanted too. By early December, I had already decided I was going to propose around New Year's. Nothing flashy, just something small and intentional. I had a ring picked out and partially paid off. I had even started preparing for Christmas with her family because it would be the first time I was spending the holiday with them. Her dad collects old jazz records, and her mom likes hand-painted ornaments from local artists. I tracked down both without asking Marissa for help. The gifts were already sitting in the trunk of my car. That was the same week things started feeling off in a way I could not rationalize. Every time I mentioned Christmas plans, she got weird about it. Not openly angry, just evasive. She would change the subject, answer vaguely, or act like I was being intense for asking basic questions like when we were leaving or whether I should bring an overnight bag. Then she started taking phone calls in the other room. Then she snapped at me for asking if something was wrong. 3 days before Christmas, while I had her parents' gifts already wrapped and a ring payment scheduled for the following Friday, she finally explained why she had been acting strange. And the second she said it, the entire relationship suddenly made a lot more sense. When Marissa finally brought it up, she did it in the most casual way possible, like she was telling me the weather forecast. We were sitting in her living room on a Tuesday night. I had just come over after work and brought takeout. Nothing unusual about the evening until she suddenly said something that did not match the conversation at all. She said I should probably make other plans for Christmas. At first, I thought she meant her parents had changed locations or something like that. So I asked what she meant. That is when she said it. She told me she could not bring me to Christmas dinner with her family this year because her ex was going to be there and it would be awkward. She said it like this was a normal scheduling conflict. I remember just staring at her for a few seconds because my brain needed time to process what she had actually said. Not only had we been dating for 2 years, but she knew I had already bought gifts for her parents. I had mentioned it multiple times over the past week. So I asked the obvious question. Why would her ex be at her family's Christmas dinner? Her answer was that he had stayed close with her brother after the breakup, and the family had known him for years, so he still showed up to some holidays. According to her, it was not a big deal, and everyone had moved on. Then she added the part that really made the situation clear. She said it would just be easier if I did not come this year, because it might make him uncomfortable. Not the family. Not her. Him. The guy she dated before me. The guy she broke up with more than 2 years earlier. Apparently, his comfort level took priority over the guy who had been in the relationship since. I asked her if she was serious. She said yes, completely serious, and then she added that I was making it bigger than it needed to be. She explained that it was only one holiday, and I could just spend Christmas with my own family instead. She said next year it would probably be different. What made the whole thing even more absurd was the timing. The gifts for her parents were already in my car. The ring I was planning to give her in 2 weeks was half paid off. I had spent the last month preparing to show her family that I took the relationship seriously. And she was sitting there telling me that the most practical solution was for me to quietly remove myself from Christmas so her ex-boyfriend would not feel weird. The longer she talked, the more calm I got. Not because I was okay with it. Because something in my head had already started rearranging the situation into a much simpler equation. And once that clicked, the next decision became very easy. Once she finished explaining why her ex-boyfriend needed to be comfortable at Christmas, I realized something important. Marissa had already decided what the hierarchy was. Her ex, her family dynamic with him, and whatever awkwardness she wanted to avoid were all higher priorities than the relationship she had with me. And the way she said it made it clear she expected me to just accept that. I asked her one simple question. I asked if she actually expected me to step aside for her ex-boyfriend after 2 years of dating. She immediately rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. According to her, it was just one holiday and I should not be insecure about it. She kept repeating that word. Insecure. That was the moment I stopped trying to negotiate the situation. I told her the relationship was over. Not raised voice, not an argument. Just a statement. I said if the guy she dated before me had a higher place in her life than the guy she was currently dating, then there was nothing left to discuss. She actually laughed when I said it. She thought I was bluffing. Marissa had a habit of assuming that every disagreement was just part of a long conversation that she would eventually win. She leaned back on the couch and told me to relax because I was clearly overreacting. Instead of arguing, I stood up and started gathering my things. My laptop charger from the kitchen counter. The gym bag I kept at her place. A couple of shirts from the bedroom closet. It took maybe 5 minutes. At first she watched me like it was some kind of performance. Then she started asking what I was doing. I told her again. The relationship was over. She tried switching tactics. First annoyed, then sarcastic, then dismissive. She said I was proving her point about being dramatic. She said I would cool off and call her later. I told her I would not. Before leaving, I grabbed the gift bag that was sitting by the door. The one with the presents I had bought for her parents. That is when she finally looked confused. She asked why I was taking those. I told her because they were never meant for someone who thought her ex-boyfriend should come before her partner. Then I walked out. But instead of driving home, I drove somewhere else. If her ex was important enough to still attend Christmas with her family, then her parents clearly knew him well. Which meant they probably also deserved to know exactly why their daughter's boyfriend of 2 years had suddenly disappeared 3 days before Christmas. So I drove to their house. Her parents lived about 20 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood outside the city. I had been there a few times before for dinner, so showing up was not strange enough to raise suspicion on its own. Still, it felt surreal pulling into their driveway knowing the relationship had technically ended less than 30 minutes earlier. I sat in the car for a minute just to make sure my head was clear. I did not want this to turn into something emotional or messy. The goal was simple. Be direct, be respectful, and leave. I grabbed the 2 gift bags from the passenger seat and walked up to the front door. Her dad answered. He looked surprised but not concerned. He just said, "Hey, Johnny," and stepped aside to let me in like it was any other visit. Her mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, and she greeted me the same way. For a moment, I almost wondered if Marissa had already called them. But the confusion showed up quickly when they realized I had arrived alone and without her. Her mom asked where Marissa was. I told them she was at her apartment and that I had come by myself because I needed to explain something before Christmas. That immediately got their attention. We sat down at the kitchen table, and I kept it simple. I told them Marissa had informed me earlier that evening that I would not be attending Christmas this year because her ex-boyfriend was going to be there, and it might make him uncomfortable if I showed up. I made it clear I was not there to create drama or ask them to change their plans. I simply thought it would be strange if I disappeared without explanation after spending 2 years in their daughter's life. Both of them were quiet for a moment. Her dad leaned back in his chair like he was trying to process the information. Her mom looked genuinely confused. She asked if I was serious. I told her yes. Then I explained that because of that conversation, I had ended the relationship about 20 minutes earlier. I said it calmly, the same way I had said it to Marissa. Her dad rubbed his forehead and asked if Marissa had really said that her ex needed to be comfortable. I told him those were basically the exact words. After that, I slid the gift bags across the table. I told them I had already bought their Christmas presents earlier in the week because I had expected to spend the holiday with them. Returning them felt wrong, and none of this situation was their fault. Her mom tried to refuse them at first. I told her it was not necessary. The gifts were already bought, and they were meant for them regardless of what happened between me and Marissa. The room was quiet again for a few seconds. Then her dad asked me one question that made the whole situation even more interesting. He asked me if Marissa had any idea I was there talking to them right now. When her dad asked if Marissa knew I was there, I told him no. I said the conversation between Marissa and me had ended maybe 30 minutes earlier, and I had come straight over. I had not called her parents ahead of time, and I had not mentioned that I was coming. His reaction was interesting. He did not look angry at me. If anything, he looked tired. Her mom looked between us and asked the obvious question. She asked why Marissa would prioritize an ex-boyfriend's comfort over someone she had been dating for 2 years. I told her honestly that I did not know. Then I added something that made the situation clearer. I said the part that bothered me most was not even the ex being there. If her family had known him for years, that was their choice. I was not going to tell people who they could invite to their own house. The problem was that Marissa's solution was to remove me from the situation entirely instead of expecting her ex to handle a little awkwardness like an adult. Her dad nodded slowly when I said that. Then he said something that surprised me. He told me that the ex had been coming around less over the past year because things had gotten uncomfortable after Marissa started bringing me to family events. According to him, the ex had never caused problems, but the dynamic had clearly shifted. That raised another question for me. So I asked directly, did Marissa ask them to invite the ex this year? Both of them looked at each other for a second before answering. Her mom said yes. Apparently, Marissa had called a few weeks earlier and specifically asked if her ex could come to Christmas dinner because she felt bad that he would otherwise be spending the holiday alone. That changed the entire picture in about 2 seconds. It meant the awkward situation she described was not some unavoidable family tradition. She created it. Then she solved it by removing me. I did not say anything for a moment because the math on that was very simple. Her dad looked at the gifts sitting on the table and then back at me. He said he appreciated me coming over and telling them directly. He also said he thought I handled the situation more calmly than most people would have. I told him there was no point turning it into a fight. At that point, the relationship was already over in my head. Right as I stood up to leave, her mom's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen. Then she looked back at me with a very specific expression. Marissa was calling her. I did not stick around for the phone call. When Marissa's mom said her daughter was calling, I told them it was probably better if they handled that conversation without me sitting there. I had already explained why I would not be around for Christmas, and that was really the only reason I had come over. Her dad walked me to the door. Before I left, he shook my hand and said he was sorry the situation had played out that way. He also said he respected the way I handled it. I told him I appreciated that, but honestly the decision had not been complicated. Once someone shows you where you rank in their priorities, there is not much left to debate. After that, I got in my car and drove home. The first thing I did when I got inside my apartment was block Marissa's number. Not as a dramatic gesture, just practical. I had already said the relationship was over, and there was no version of the next conversation that was going to improve the situation. It would only turn into an argument about whether I was overreacting. I also blocked her on social media for the same reason. Then I took care of the last loose end that mattered. The engagement ring. I had not picked it up yet, but I had already paid a significant deposit at a local jeweler. The balance was scheduled for the following week, and the ring would have been ready just before New Year's. So the next morning, before work, I drove straight to the jewelry store. I explained that the engagement had been called off and asked if the deposit could be refunded. Fortunately, their policy allowed cancellations before the ring was completed. It was not an instant refund, but they confirmed the money would be returned to my card within a few business days. Walking out of the store felt strange for a moment. 3 days earlier, I had been planning a proposal. Now I was canceling it before the ring even existed. But the feeling passed pretty quickly, because the more I replayed the conversation with Marissa in my head, the more obvious it became that the relationship I thought I was building had not actually been there. For the next couple of months, things were quiet. I focused on work, spent time with friends, and honestly enjoyed the absence of constant small conflicts that had somehow become normal while I was dating Marissa. Then in early spring, something happened that made the entire situation come back around in a way I definitely did not expect. Marissa found out that I was seeing someone new. For about 2 months after the breakup, I heard absolutely nothing from Marissa, which was exactly how I wanted it. Blocking her meant I did not see messages if she sent any. And since our friend groups were not heavily overlapping, There were very few ways for information to travel between us. My life just went back to being calm and predictable again. Work was busy at the start of the year, which helped. Data analysis projects tend to come in waves, and the company had started a new reporting system that kept me occupied most days. Outside of work, I started reconnecting with people I had not seen much while dating Marissa. Not because she banned me from seeing friends, but because spending time with her usually meant adjusting around her schedule and moods. Without that friction, my weeks suddenly had a lot more room in them. Around early March, I met someone new. Her name was Qley. She was 30 and worked as a physical therapist. We met through a mutual friend at a small birthday dinner, nothing dramatic. Just a normal conversation that turned into another conversation a few days later. What stood out about Qley immediately was how easy everything felt. No strange tests. No constant corrections about my tone. No weird competitive energy during normal conversations. If we disagreed about something, it stayed a disagreement instead of turning into a personality flaw that needed to be analyzed. We took things slow at first. A couple of dinners, a few weekend walks, normal getting to know each other stuff. By the time April rolled around, we were seeing each other regularly. And that is apparently when the information finally reached Marissa. I still do not know exactly who told her. My best guess is that one of the mutual acquaintances who followed both of us on social media saw a photo Claire posted of us at a hiking trail outside the city. Nothing dramatic. Just two people standing next to each other smiling. But somehow that picture made its way back to Marissa. I only realized something was happening when one of my friends texted me asking if everything was okay. I asked why he was asking. He sent me a screenshot. It was from Marissa's Instagram story. And the story was not subtle. She had posted a long rant about how some men jump into new relationships immediately after a breakup because they are emotionally weak and incapable of being alone. Then she added a line about how some people fake being calm and logical but are actually just running away from accountability. She did not mention my name directly, but the timing made it very obvious who she was talking about. And apparently that was just the beginning. At first I ignored it. Marissa had always liked indirect commentary online. When we were dating, she occasionally posted vague quotes after arguments. Things about emotional intelligence, maturity, people revealing their true character. It was always designed so that people who knew the situation would understand the target. This time it was not subtle anymore. Over the next few days, the posts started getting more aggressive. She began posting multiple times a day. Long paragraphs about betrayal. About men who pretend to be stable but are secretly manipulative. About how some women unknowingly date men who are emotionally calculating. She still did not write my name, but she did something even stranger. She started hinting at details that only people close to us would recognize. References to Christmas. Comments about someone abandoning a relationship right before the holidays. A few posts about people who walk away the moment they are challenged. Friends started sending me screenshots. Not because they thought she was right, because they were confused about what was happening. Then the tone shifted again. Instead of vague commentary, she started posting things that felt more like a meltdown. Videos of herself talking directly to the camera about accountability in relationships. Long captions about how people who appear calm are often the most manipulative. At one point, she even wrote that some men construct an entire personality around being logical so they can avoid responsibility for hurting people. The strange part was that she still seemed convinced that she was exposing something. Meanwhile, the actual situation had been incredibly simple. She asked me to step aside for her ex. I ended the relationship. That was the entire story. But Marissa clearly could not accept that version of events. Then things escalated again. One night, she posted something that finally crossed the line from vague frustration into something that looked unstable. She uploaded a long post claiming that some men deliberately date women for years, pretend to plan a future, and then disappear without explanation to emotionally damage them. Except she added one detail that made it obvious who she was talking about. She wrote that she had been abandoned 3 days before Christmas, which was not even close to what actually happened. At that point, people who knew both of us started asking questions. And apparently Marissa was not handling those questions very well. For the most part, I stayed out of it. I did not respond to the posts. I did not comment on anything publicly. Anyone who actually knew me already understood how the breakup happened, and I was not interested in having an internet argument with someone I had already removed from my life. But the problem with public meltdowns is that eventually they stop being vague. People started asking Marissa direct questions. A couple of our mutual acquaintances apparently asked what she meant about being abandoned right before Christmas. Others asked why she was posting about a breakup that had happened months earlier. Instead of calming things down, that seemed to push her further. The post got longer. The tone got sharper. Then she made the mistake that basically ended the whole narrative she was trying to build. One night, she wrote a long post about how she had been planning to introduce her boyfriend to her family for Christmas, and he had suddenly disappeared after a minor disagreement. Except someone in the comments asked a very simple question. They asked why she had told people earlier that her ex-boyfriend was also going to be at Christmas. That comment sat there for about 20 minutes before Marissa replied, and her reply accidentally confirmed everything. She said that her ex was only there because her family had known him longer, and it would have been unfair to make him uncomfortable by bringing someone new. Someone new. That phrase immediately got attention. Because 2 years is not exactly new. A few more people started asking questions after that. Nothing aggressive. Just basic logic. If the relationship had lasted 2 years, why would the ex take priority? Why was the solution removing the current boyfriend? Why was she describing it as abandonment if she had told him not to come? Within an hour, the comment section had turned into a quiet pile of people pointing out the obvious gaps. Then the post disappeared. The next morning, her entire account was private. And for a while, everything went quiet again. But that was not the end of it. Because a couple weeks later, Marissa did something that made it clear she still had not processed what had actually happened. She tried to contact me in person. About 2 weeks after her account went private, I was leaving work a little later than usual. My office building has a small parking lot behind it, and most people were already gone for the day. I was walking toward my car when I heard someone say my name. It was Marissa. I had not seen her in person since the night I packed my things and left her apartment. She was standing near the edge of the lot, like she had been waiting there for a while. My first thought was honestly confusion. I had blocked her everywhere, and we did not run in the same daily circles anymore. So the only way she could have known where I would be was if she had deliberately come looking. She walked toward me and immediately started talking. The tone was completely different from the version of events she had been posting online. She was not angry. She was frustrated and defensive at the same time. She said people had been questioning her about what happened between us, and she felt like I had allowed everyone to believe a false version of the story. I asked her what part was false. She said the way people were describing the Christmas situation made it sound like she chose her ex over me. I told her that was exactly what happened. That answer clearly irritated her. She started explaining again that it was more complicated than that. According to her, the real issue was that I had refused to be flexible about an awkward family dynamic. That was when I realized the conversation was pointless. Months had passed, and she was still trying to frame the situation as if I had overreacted instead of simply making a decision. So I told her the same thing I had told her the night we broke up. If someone asks their partner to step aside so an ex can feel comfortable at a family holiday, the relationship is already over whether they say it out loud or not. After that, I wished her well and got into my car. She tried to continue the conversation, but I did not engage. There was nothing new left to say. The interesting part came later. Because the contrast between that relationship and the one I have now made something very obvious. With Claire, nothing requires constant negotiation about basic respect. There are no strange loyalty tests, no social games, no invisible hierarchies where former partners somehow outrank current ones. Everything just functions normally. And looking back now, the biggest mistake I almost made was not leaving earlier. The Christmas conversation did not destroy the relationship. It just exposed what...
Last time we came to visit with you, I believe, was on December the 27th of 2024. We were just on the front end of having organized 30 committed Texans whose own families had had experiences related to trauma, addiction, alcoholism, and the wounds of war, who, after hearing a plan that was developed for the state of Kentucky to bring Ibogaine to the American people as an FDA-approved medication and breakthrough treatment for addiction and trauma, committed themselves to using their time, their talent, and their network to achieve what had never been done before, and that was to convince an individual state to undertake drug development to create a therapeutic medical breakthrough for public health crises within its borders that are representative of the national reality. After you released the interview with us on January 2nd, 2025, we pursued a 5.5-month blistering campaign to convince 188 blank slate Texas legislators to fund the single largest psychedelic research and medical development project in history, that being the $50 million Texas Ibogaine Initiative. We had the assistance of some in-state allies, one of which was Texans for Greater Mental Health, led by a dear friend and brother of mine, Logan Davidson, who was my right hand, going to meet with legislators continuously while I set up shop at a hotel here in Halston and lived here just about part-time, wearing the shoe leather off, sweating, and making sure that everybody who needed to be introduced, educated, and motivated to get behind this would do so. At the end of this 5.5 months, we secured the votes of yes of 181 out of 188 legislators between the Texas House of Representatives and State Senate. There was one individual who we had to persuade at the 11th hour to get behind this project. On May the 14th, 2025, just 36 hours before the Texas budget was finalized, this bill that would create the first unified FDA drug development trial with Ibogaine in U.S. history was not funded. I woke up that morning, and I believe very much in keeping your prayers in the closet, as Jesus taught, and not getting out there parading about it. But on that morning, I got a call, and it was, hey, we're getting to the 11th hour. We don't have money to secure this. It may not make it. We've done everything that we can. And I literally got down on my hands and knees and said, God, please let this happen. And if it cannot happen, help me understand why. 3 hours later, I got a telephone call asking if I could go and meet with the Texas House Speaker and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. I went at 4:30 in the afternoon on May the 14th and spent an hour with these two gentlemen going back and forth about what this project was, why it was so existentially necessary for Texas and the country. And on Friday morning, May the 16th at 10 a.m., we got a text message from Lieutenant Governor Patrick confirming that he would approve and fully fund the Texas Ibogaine Initiative. As we walk in here today, literally, just 10 minutes before we walked into your studio, I can confirm that the great state of Texas is going to fully fund the Texas Ibogaine Initiative, originally intended to be a public-private partnership, but now has decided on its own to commit a full $100 million to launch the development of Ibogaine all the way through the FDA's drug development process for the benefit of the American people. To do so on its own, without any drug development partner, and to do it for the good of humanity.
That's phenomenal. So what did you have to say to Dan Patrick to convince him of this? And kudos to him for doing this.
Well, I had some very wonderful advocates